Thank you very much for the opening statement, and I'll begin with the questions. I want to talk, both of us mentioned in our opening statements, and you mentioned in your statement too, the Coast Guard's role in interdicting the drug trafficking. Can you tell me what partners you work with in order to stop drugs from coming in, and how that partnership works in terms of preventing and seizing not just the drugs, but the smugglers as well?
Absolutely, Madam Chairman. Thank you for the question. Here in the United States, within our own department, we work very closely with the Customs and Border Protection, particularly their Air Marine branch. They fly P-3s on the maritime patrol side of the operations and in the equation. They contribute about almost 50% of the hours there. We work with Homeland Security investigations on the investigative side. Once we take the drugs off the water, HSI is tied into that work. Across the United States government, we work very closely with Department of Justice. I mentioned 600 folks interdicted at sea. When you look at the last 3-year periods, it's 1.4 million pounds of cocaine, 1,800 smugglers. We bring them back here domestically, work with DOJ for prosecution. It's the cycle of success. They help us derive information, intelligence, to build on cases, to reach deeper into the cartels. We work with the Department of Defense, the combatant commands. I am a force provider to U.S. Southern Command, and a subordinate command to them is JIADF South. I think many of you and many of the committee members have been to JIADF South. That is the premier institution, I think, on the planet for coordinating interdiction efforts internationally, here domestically. And then we work downrange, man, with partner nations. We have more than 30 bilaterals here in the Western Hemisphere that allow us to partner with key countries like Colombia in the drug fight, Panama, Costa Rica, you name it. We work very closely. So it is a multi-level domestic partnership, international partnership. That is how we get after the fight.
Do you feel that you have the adequate resources to keep moving and expanding that responsibility?
Madam Chair, when I would say, as Senator Tester talked about, there's a capacity conversation. You know, I commit to provide 4 ships on an annual basis, what we call airborne use of force, Hitron helicopters 4. We're actioning about 25% of the known intelligence. With more, we can do more. But I would say we are pushing into the fight. This year, the budget request increases monies for additional Hitron airborne use of force helicopter hours. Right now, my commitment's 4. This will allow us to potentially put a 5th helicopter down there. While we commit to 4, we're striving to put 6 or 7 cutters down there on an annual basis, because this is, in fact, important work for the nation.
Right, right. Thank you, and thank you for your good work on that. When we toured the Coast Guard facilities in West Virginia, one of the things that I think came to mind of the great work that they're doing there on vessel identification and continuity of operations and technology is the need for upscaling the Coast Guard's IT systems. You mentioned that on our visit. What do you have in this budget that will do that, and how do you see that rolling out over several years?
Well, Madam Chairman, I would say first off, thanks for acknowledging that. We have, antiquated infrastructure, IT infrastructure across the Coast Guard. That is a place when you have bright employees, they're making decisions about, what's the organization's commitment to the things that enable them to do their job. So we do have to make an investment. In this budget, we have a $14 million line item. It's a PC&I, so on the acquisition side, that really gets after cyber and enterprise mission platform upgrades. There's a couple specific projects. There's MUOS, which is our satellite compatibility with DoD. There's what we call the MISRAM, which is our Maritime Security Risk Assessment Model. We're upgrading those. That's how we do port vulnerabilities. But writ large, man, that $14 million, I think, is an initial investment on a longer-term plan to bring our antiquated systems forward. At the OSC, we design platforms there, we layer in. That's part of our service center, one of the 3 key nodes for all our mission applications. So this is the initial conversation on, I think, what will be a multi-year investment to pull the Coast Guard forward. And lastly, we're watching what the Department of Defense is doing on a cloud-based application. We're actually going to the cloud with our auxiliary ops program this summer, so we're dabbling there, but we're kind of trying to inform ourselves from best practices here in government, because we do have to make a bold move, ma'am, I think, and start that on my watch here.
Well, I'm very supportive of those initiatives. One of the things also that when we went to Huntington and we saw the single gender crew and I know part of your initiative and the Coast Guard Academy's initiative is to diversify the Coast Guard, more women, more minorities. And you mentioned, and I think it was pretty clear from the tour, that they're not set up to have both genders to be able to serve on in such a small space. Could you talk a little bit about how you envision the Coast Guard changing to make that different and make it more accommodating?
Absolutely, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you for the question. So the Osage, which we're on,
Right.
a river tender here, pushing a barge, you know, the only woman that could accommodate would be the officer in charge, the way the berthing areas are configured. That ship is more than a half-century old. All our new ships are built in with more modularity. It's enhanced creature comforts for the crew. We're not in 21-person berthing anymore, 24-person berthing. There's 6, 8, 4-person berthings. It allows us much more flexibility in assigning women. Sometimes, you know, matching the pay grades and the availability ratings, you just can't get there. So every new ship we are bringing to bear with the help of this committee is absolutely a step towards greater gender integration for our men and women here in the Coast Guard, particularly for our women. We want every opportunity that exists in the Coast Guard to be available to both men and women.
Well, good. I'm again, supportive there. I'd like to give you a chance, since the budget was written several months ago, and we know things change rapidly around here. I just wanted to know if there was anything that you would like to articulate that may not be in your original budget that may be useful for us in formulating this appropriations bill.
Well, Madam Chairwoman, I would say I think the administration's budget is a fair representation. It maintains momentum on our key capital interests. That's the Polar Security Cutter, it's the Offshore Patrol Cutter. This committee has been tremendously supportive. On the operating side, this is a start in the right direction. I talked a little bit about being left outside of that raising the bar for the military under that National Security Presidential Memo #1. There's some good things in here, $10 million towards maintenance for cutters, some people initiatives, our electronic health record. So I would say, ma'am, this is a definite strong step. Is there anything that has changed specifically? Nothing that I would call out to the committee's attention today, but I'm very encouraged about really having the conversation about what a ready Coast Guard looks like. And there's some investment needed, ma'am, to do that for America.
Thank you very much. And